Welcome to Dine Dish, the podcast where hospitality meets real talk. I'm your host, Michele DiMeo, restaurant diva, serving up the stories, strategies, and behind-the-scenes truths of the restaurant business. All right, everyone, we are back for another episode of Dine and Dish. Another week, another topic. We have so many great things going on. We're actually grand opening our newest VD Severna Park tonight. So right after the podcast, I'm going to jump in the car and go help Janara with the opening of our new store. But we have an amazing topic today. Once I get the guest on, we'll talk about how we came together because it's kind of a crazy story. It brings my high school years into our conversation today. But we're going to talk about reality of restaurant growth and leadership and so many cool topics. And it can relate to so many different industries. But I don't want to give too much away, but let's get Greg on the line. Greg, are you with me?
I'm here. Yeah, so good to be here, Michelle. Thank you.
I just have to let everybody know how this whole conversation came together. I mean, I have a very good friend, and I actually just texted her before we got on the call today. And I said, "You're never going to believe who's on my show tonight." And she's like, "Oh, I can't wait to listen. I can't wait to listen." And I mean, I've known Bonnie since I was 8 years old.
Oh my gosh. That's amazing.
Isn't that crazy?
That's
And she
awesome.
listens to the show every week. And she's like, "I have the perfect guest for you."
I love that. I love it. Yeah,
Yeah. I guess you
Bonnie and
have
I have
some
known
big
each other
shoes to
for
fill.
maybe 10, 15 years now. And she's just such a wonderful person. She really is. And so yeah, it's funny how things like that happen, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, she put our worlds together. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So before we get started and we jump right into our topic, and I ask you all these amazing questions, why don't you introduce just what you do and your expertise? And we're going to get into your book and everything that you've done. But if you can just let the listeners know who you are and what you do, and I'm sure you're in much better weather than I am, it would be amazing.
Yeah, it's actually I'm in San Diego right now, so it's not too shabby, I will say.
Yeah.
But listen, I grew up on the East Coast and I came from Virginia Beach actually. And I had my first restaurant job at 14 years old at Popeye's Chicken. And back then it was just, I got a job to work with my friends to pay for a surfboard and I had no idea what I was getting myself into at the time. But I'll tell you, basically throughout the years, I pretty much exclusively worked in restaurants and in hospitality. And I think I just love the lifestyle. I love the quick cash and the fun that we'd have and, all the different environments. And, you know, somewhere around just after college, I got into the entertainment business. I was playing music and acting full time and doing all that. And of course, when you're a professional entertainer, what are you doing? You're bartending, waiting tables, all that kind of stuff to make a buck to get by.
I think everybody has worked in the restaurant industry at some point in their life,
Well, and I think
in
everybody
some way, shape, or
should
form.
actually. I think it needs to be a requirement, but yeah, so it was somewhere around the early 2000s where I got out of entertainment and actually kind of had a very defining moment in my life. I decided to kick the alcohol and drug habit that I had developed over the years. And when that happened, my life kind of changed quite a bit, as you might imagine, and I decided to get somewhat serious about, a career. And I really didn't have many skill sets outside of entertainment other than restaurants, and so I kind of just dove headfirst into the industry and set some goals for myself and decided, I wanted to make a life in that world. And it's so funny because there was a point in time where I used to think if I became a restaurant manager, that I was like the kiss of death, like I failed in life. And here I was, that was what I was doing. But I knew enough then to know that that wasn't my end goal. Like I wanted to learn as much as I possibly could about the industry, as far as all of the leadership roles and all that would offer. But I knew I didn't want to just be, end up just being a GM or an ops director for a group. I knew I wanted to really scratch my entrepreneurial itch. I didn't know at the time that I was an entrepreneur. But there was something in me that, really wanted to kind of fulfill that creative side of me.
Right.
And so I really quickly started, kind of, I would moonlight and I would consult on the side. And I even opened a restaurant while I was working as a GM for a big restaurant group. And, I just started my foray into business, and, it was really kind of another creative outlet for me. It was never about, like, let me build something and make a bunch of money. It was always about how can I kind of fulfill this creative need inside of me, and that kind of remains true today. And so, fast forward, it's kind of a long route around this question, but
Right.
fast forward, I basically found myself, really enjoying the consulting world and really enjoying, tiptoeing into other people's, businesses and really peeking in and at the heart of what I love more than anything, and what really gets me going is people. It's building and developing teams and developing people, whether that be professionally or personally. So that's really what gets me going these days, and that's where I focus most of my work. We work with a lot of systems and process and stuff, but it's really always it comes back to people at the end of the day.
Yeah. That's such a great point because I think any industry, whether it's hospitality, business, accounting, legal, whatever, HR, it always starts with people and it starts with
Mm.
culture. And my last show, I had on Michael Lassen, who focuses mostly on franchise, but we
Mhm.
talked about so many amazing things that this show's going to fit like a puzzle piece. They're just going to fit right together. And we talked about culture and we talked about when it's time to scale and when it's time to take people and make them leaders and, you know, when you do franchise versus corporate. So we're going to talk all through those pieces today, but let's kind of jump right into this and talk about growth and the difference between whether a store is busy or if it's profitable and what you think because you say that you get into other people's business and you dive right in when they should scale, when they should grow, when they should scale back, is it time to move? And, what's your whole vision on that? What's your thoughts on this whole process?
Yeah, that's such a great question, and I think a lot of business owners are asking that of themselves. They're trying to figure out that piece, like when is the right time to move and hit the gas. And really, it's kind of different for everybody. But I think that a lot of people think of growth and scale as just like lots of top line and adding stores, and going fast. I mean, usually when you think of the word scaling and growth, that a lot of times that's what we're thinking. Because we see that, we see the stories about, and we celebrate that, how many people grew so fast and they were able to, to build these incredible empires in record
Mhm.
time. And so, but really, that can be, that those are kind of anomalies, and it's not always a healthy way to go. It's not always the best way to go. And so before you really start thinking about scaling and growing, I mean, I think we need to understand like, how well are we doing with what we're at? You mentioned profitability. That's one marker, right? Are we profitable?
Right.
You
Right.
know, are our systems set up for growth? Scaling is about replication and duplication most often, right? And so, unless you have something solid that you have proven that is working, and you're always going to be working on it, it's very difficult to achieve the type and level of growth that you're ultimately going to want. And then also, I think one of the things that doesn't get really, gets kind of discounted is we don't really necessarily have a strong, solid vision for where we're going. I mean, I think a lot of entrepreneurs in any business really, really have to understand like what is it you're doing and why are you doing it? Those are important questions to really get in touch with because we can quickly, as we're scaling and growing, if we start to lose sight of those things, it can spin out of control really fast and become very difficult to manage.
Yeah. I agree 100%. I mean, being in the restaurant side, I mean, obviously, we've been talked to so many times about what do you think of this and, consulting in other
Oh,
businesses. But
oh,
being on the restaurant
yeah.
side, it's very humbling because you can grow so quickly. Back when I started with Gennaro, oh my God, it's been almost 20 years. My background wasn't in the
Mhm.
restaurant business, it was,
Good.
legal and it was accounting and I was involved in franchise. And I joined him to help really build his empire, and it grew so fast. And really have to, we always talk about the four-legged chair. You have to have all of those legs solid, because if one's missing, that chair falls over. And then there's where you have that dangerous growth where you grow really fast and it's like, uh-oh, where's the system? Where's the operational consistency? Where's that whole focus to keep that four-legged chair standing? And,
Mhm.
back when I joined him, there was so many things that were going on, the drop of the economy, and, you know, he had signed a ton of leases. And then it's like, oh my God, you got to raise all this capital to build all these stores. So there were so many different things that were going on that affected us. And, I started by saying it's very humbling because you grow and then you might close a few, and then you grow and then you might close more. And that's, I mean, for a restaurateur, it's like, wow, I'm closing my restaurant. That's defeat, but it's
Oh,
not
yeah.
defeat. You can learn from that and grow from it. So
Yeah.
there's so many cool things that we're going to talk about that, like you talked about, systems and consistency and leadership development. You definitely have to have a foundation first.
Yeah, no doubt, and I'm so glad that you mentioned that about closing stores because you're absolutely right. It's I've done it myself. I've closed many stores, more than I've loved, wanted to. And I even heard Danny Meyer talking about this at a conference recently. He had said that, he was asked this question, like, what was one of the biggest, things that if you knew then what you know now, and he said, I would have
Right.
closed this restaurant much quicker than I did because he's like, I was just
Mhm.
too emotionally involved in it. And understand that's not a defeat. It's actually success if you look at it strategically. So yeah, I love that you said that.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of times we call it feeding the monster. You have this restaurant and it's just sucking everything. It sucks the money, it sucks your employees, it sucks your time.
Mhm.
And as a restaurateur, you want to put your time and your effort and your money into successful concepts. So if you have one and you have 14 restaurants and there's one that's the energy sucker and you're feeding that monster, you have to make that decision eventually to say, okay, what do we do? Do we keep feeding the monster or do we close the monster? So it's understanding and knowing when to say, okay, let's learn from that and close and move on.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So let's jump right into foundation. You talked systems, operational consistency, leadership. Um, let's talk key performance indicators. What are those, and what
Mhm.
do you think you need to have in place before you truly jump into expanding? What do you tell your clients before they want to open multiple locations?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. And I mean, look, there's so many different KPIs are so we can go down the rabbit hole with that. Right? But I mean, first of all, profitability obviously is key, right? I mean, we got to know that we can be profitable at the end of the day. And I think the funny thing about that is that sometimes we focus so much on the top line and all of the things that we're doing, whether we're trying to push marketing or we're trying to get more butts and seats or we're trying to reach more guests and those types of things. And we sometimes lose sight of that all important profitability piece. And, I would much rather have a low revenue store with high profitability to scale
Mhm.
than have a high revenue store with, just barely getting by and try to scale that. Right. It's totally different, you're kind of like fighting the tide there.
Yeah.
And so I think if there's one most important, KPI, I'd say let's point to that. And there's so many things that affect that, obviously. And there are definitely, look, systems and people kind of go together, right? Like you need people to run the systems, but you need systems to support the people, right? And how those worlds come together are super, super important to understand. And so I look at that foundation when I'm looking at expanding any kind of a brand or concept. How do those pieces function at scale? Right? And
Yeah.
so kind of really understanding what that looks like, is really important to understand.
Yeah. So you talk people. We spent so much time on the last show talking about culture.
Mm,
Culture is so important. Back in my retail days, I mean, I'm not gonna tell that I'm aging myself, but back in the day, I did a training through the Ritz-Carlton, and the Ritz-Carlton training, I mean, you wanna talk about culture. They have probably one of the strongest cultures. I mean, even the training program is just amazing where they take you through what it feels like to be a guest. And, they call it Mr. Biv and they have this whole process of service. But culture's so important because you can grow anything you want. But with the wrong people, it's detrimental to your business. But with the right culture and the right people and the right accountability, you can take any business truly to the next level. I mean, how does culture truly, from what you see, from what you've been in different industries, restaurants versus, any type of setting, what's that cultural impact and how does, what do you think in terms of people and growth and that whole accountability piece?
Well, okay, so first of all, here's a great story. I When I opened, my Italian place, a few years back, I actually took the points of excellence from Ritz-Carlton, and I
Ah,
adopted
well,
them
how
for
about
my own
that?
restaurant.
So, about the little card they have with the little man and
Oh,
the whole
man.
Mr. Biv?
So, yeah, so I didn't go too deep down the rabbit hole, but there's a list of, like, commitments, right, that they kinda
Yes.
publish, right, and we took those commitments
Mhm.
and we kinda made them our own and made them our commitments to excellence within our teams, and we
Mhm.
use that as our foundation to kinda train from. So I think that's great. Um, but listen, I could literally talk about this for days, but I'll tell you, every business, every restaurant, and every business has a culture, right? The question is that culture by default, or is that culture something that is intentional, right? Because, the culture is going to become whatever it is left to whatever, devices, right? And so, um, to me, the absolute number one non-negotiable, in any of my restaurants, any of my businesses is always, how healthy and how um, present is that culture. And by that I mean, here's an example. Every business out there, pretty much most of them have some kind of a mission statement that the owners come up with when they
Right, of course, yep.
right? It's like, oh, this is our
Mhm.
mission, this is why we do it, this is our, these are our core values. The problem is that usually, more often than not, those values are not lived within the business, right? And I say that
And many
because
times they're not even practiced by the owners or the leaders that are running that vision.
absolutely, absolutely, and so it's resigned to
Yeah.
a statement. At very best, it's on the wall somewhere, right? And that's usually not even the case, right? And so, a lot of the work that I do with my clients these days is to take those ideas, those core values, those things that we are committed to and we say we're committed to, and make them felt at every level by the team and by the guest. And, the way that we do that is we start to pull those ideas and thoughts, and we bring them into our conversations. We start to have conversations about them because if you think about it, your teams are going to basically become whatever it is that that's the top of their mind and what we're talking about, right? So, if you think about the chatter that they're having at the side station or, on the
Yeah.
line or whatever, this and that, if we can weave our core values and those ideas and those commitments to excellence and those mission statements into our conversations more often and on a consistent basis, it's going to start to come alive. And it's going to start to be acted on. And it's going to start to become just how we do things. And then, and only then, it'll be felt, truly felt in a consistent way by the guests, right? You look at something like Chick-fil-A, right? You're going to go in and you're going to hear my
Yeah.
pleasure, right?
My pleasure, my pleasure. It's funny you say
you
that
know?
because every time we go in there, my husband, every time they say, my pleasure," he cringes. He's like, "Do you have to say that?" I'm like, "You know what? That's part of their culture. They have to say it. It's part of their training. It's
That's
part of
right.
their culture." But,
Yes.
some people love it, some people hate it, but it's true. They say it. "My pleasure."
Yep, yep. I'd rather bet on that than not if I'm scaling a business, I can tell you that.
Of course, yeah. So, once you talk about culture, then you have to kind of talk about what goes hand in hand with that. It's community presence, it's supporting the community. So it's almost like you have to take the culture from inside and take it. How do you translate that to take the culture to the outside? Like you talked about the
Mhm.
guest feeling it, your customer feeling it, not just what you see inside the business. So now it's like, okay, you're creating this culture. How do you then take it and make it a community presence so people feel, like you said, Chick-fil-A, they
Mhm.
come in and they say that. But how does that whole process work? Because I mean, obviously that's huge when it comes to opening stores and being profitable and making money, not just advertising, right?
Yeah. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right, and so I'd say that it's no different than, with your teams, right? I mean, there's ways that we communicate to our guests and our potential guests, right? If you're marketing your brand and you're using digital channels, maybe you're using some loyalty, maybe you're sending out
Mhm.
emails, whatever you're doing to market out in the world, right? Those are amazing opportunities for you to communicate who you are, what you're about, why people should align with you, right? Everybody's got their own vibe and their own kind of way of, doing things, and they've got their own stories. And they've got, their why behind why they do this. Very few effectively communicate that openly and often, right? Usually
Yeah.
when we're
Oh,
posting
all the
something,
time. I see it all the time.
yeah, you post something up, a great picture of your burger, or, you put up a special, hey, we're running, a buy one, get one this week, or whatever it is, right? Like coupons and that kind of stuff. And there's space for that. There's no problem doing that. But I think we should be spending a lot more time connecting with people. And the way that we do that is we get heartfelt and we get honest about who we are, who we serve, why we serve them. And that's going to resonate. And that's going to be something that people are going to pick up on. And whether it's conscious or subconscious, they're going to gravitate toward that and they're going to want to be more part of it. You know,
Yeah.
it's creating your
Well,
tribe.
brand identity is so important. I mean, that starts from culture, that translates to the community in terms of presence. And then let's talk marketing. I mean,
Mhm.
when to market, how to market, budgets and marketing. I mean, what's the number one thing operators do when they're struggling, or their sales are dropping, or they think, oh my god, my concept's dying. The first thing you do is they cut their marketing dollars. It's like you have to get out and brand and market and to keep that whole position of growth. And it's like the biggest mistake an operator makes, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, it's usually the first thing that gets cut, right? And that's definitely a mistake. Now
Always.
the other piece of that though is that, the spend and the ad spend and all that kind of stuff, that's only one piece of the puzzle, right?
Mhm.
I think a lot of times people rush to let's get an influencer and let's do all these things that are gonna, push the message out, which is fine. But then where we fail is that, when we have the opportunity to get them into our database and remarket to them, or when we have the opportunity to, find a way to give them an amazing experience the second, third, fourth time, right? And even use our teams in house as an effective marketing tool, right? It's like, it's funny. Like I was working with a brand, who they wanted to increase their visibility on social, right? And so they were hiring these influencers and they were paying a lot of money to and doing all these organic posts and all this kind of stuff. And what we did was we said, so this brand was really known for their breadsticks for like 20 something years. Like that was they were famous for this. People used to come in for them all the time. And so what we did was we had the team trained to ask every single table that came in, "Hey, do you wanna you was like an order of our breadsticks?" And of course, half people would say yes and half would say no. Well, the half that
Mhm.
said no, they would say, "Well, listen, I'll tell you what, if you post or tag us and post on your social right now, we'll give you a free order. How about that?" Right? And so now all of a sudden, you've got, 3, 400 people coming in and about 50, 80 or so of them are posting on their socials about your brand for free, right? And all you got to do is give them
Yeah.
an order of breadsticks, right? And so there's so many ways that we can connect with people and there's so many ways that we can, have more effective marketing if we're just creative and we really think about, how we can get that one to many approach going. That it's just, I think there's a lot of missed opportunities out there that we're not seeing. It's not just about spending more on ads.
Yeah. I agree. I mean, nowadays, social media and influencers are huge. I mean, you
Mhm.
you can't even imagine, I mean, on a daily basis, how many people reach out to me to say, "Oh, do you wanna grow your market? Do you wanna grow your likes? Do you wanna grow the amount of people that follow you?" But the problem with that is, what's your ROI on that? It's like, "Okay, great, we can pay them $1,000 and they go out and they post their little TikTok or they post their video, which is great. But just like you said, how are you gathering that information? You need the emails, you need the phone numbers, you need the ability to
Mhm.
be able to follow up because you don't want the one hit wonder. You want the ability to have that guest come in a second, a third, a fourth, and a fifth time and become a true customer of your business.
Absolutely. Yeah, if you go into any REI, what are you gonna what's gonna do you have REI out there? It's like an
Or
outdoor it's like an
of course, yeah,
outdoor
yeah,
yeah,
like
yeah,
the
yeah.
outdoor world. Of
Yeah,
course, yeah.
REI, yeah. So when you go into REI, what happens? You go in and almost everybody there is gonna ask you if you're a member, right? And you're gonna be like, by the time you get out of there, you're gonna be a member. They're gonna have your email, they're gonna have your phone number, they're gonna have all of that stuff, right? And so I say to restaurants, look, dude, train your teams. Hey, are you part of our fun club or whatever it is? Come up with something cool. Hey, are you part of the family yet? If you ask every single person that comes in that simple question, then at
Yeah.
least, good percentage of those are going to become a part of your loyalty database, and now you can remarket them. That's free to do, right? And so, the little things like that that we can be doing to really increase, our ability to get outreach done. We often have the tools right under our noses, but we don't necessarily, use them.
Right. Well, nowadays with fast casual, I mean, not so much with full service, which but fast casual, like we use Toast and we
Hmm.
have our loyalty program through Toast. And what's great about Toast is when a guest comes to the counter, the first prompt, you can schedule prompts where it says, okay, are you a part of a loyalty member? Put your phone number in, so they can't even go and do the order without it asking them, if they're a loyalty member, especially if you have kiosks. Like in a lot of these fast casual concepts, like, our Vivi's chicken and mac concept, a lot of the orders are done right there. I mean, even with Honey Grow, I mean, a lot of they don't even have people they talk to. They go right to the kiosk and place the order themselves. So if there's a way to have a prompt, you can even gather all of this data by like a self-service type system without even having somebody ask.
Absolutely. Yep. It's
Yeah,
crazy.
which is
Yep.
so valuable.
Absolutely. Yep. Yeah, it's funny. I'm a big proponent of Toast, and there's so many tools that Toast has that are underutilized. So I'm glad that you mentioned that as well. There's a lot of tools in
Yeah,
there you can use. Yep.
they do. They have a lot of I mean, this isn't gonna turn into a Toast commercial, but, Toast does have I mean, we've tried lots of POS systems, and you talked about systems, and that's a whole 'nother show. I could have you back, and we could talk systems and all this different stuff, but,
Yep.
a system is so important, and a POS can make or break a system. I mean, because if it's hard I mean, like, I'm not gonna slash and bash micros, but I am not a micro proponent. I'm not a techie computer type person, and I felt like I needed to be a brain surgeon to be able to change a price in the POS, where Toast, it's like, okay, any dummy it's like, the manuals that what is it, like, POS for dummies? I felt like, okay, anybody could change a price in Toast, you know?
Yes. Yes. Yeah. It's like PC to Mac. We're not going there.
Exactly, exactly. Well, I wanna jump right into some of your strengths because you're such a team development leadership proponent, in terms of, what's that tip on how to make the shift from being an owner to a true leader? Before you scale, you have to be, you have to take that mentality and say, okay, I'm an owner, I run one store. Well, now I want to have 10 stores. So, how do you make that shift from that owner mentality to, okay, now I got to be a leader? I got to train and I got to hire and I got to build leaders that are gonna run my business. So, I mean, why don't you kinda talk a little bit about that and the whole foundation and what you bring to the table when you get into this whole consulting model?
Yeah. No, yes. And this is, yeah, of course, I could talk about this for days. Let me give you a couple, I think, hopefully some good examples that'll kind of position this well. So I remember I mentioned I was in the entertainment business a while back, and, you know, one of the things about being on a film set is, you've got your actors, you've got the director, you've got all the stage hands, all that stuff, kind of around you. And, usually, being going from boss to leader is kind of like, looking at the role of the actor versus the director, right? So a good director, is someone who, looks at the actor and asks them, how is it that they're going to bring their essence to the script, right?
Mhm.
Director doesn't go in and say, "Okay, move your arm like this, move your head over here, walk like this, talk like this, say the line in this way." Because if you do that and micromanage the situation, you're gonna get a really crappy film, right? But a great director is going to go to the actor and they're gonna say, allow them to bring their brilliance to the screen and coax them into it and guide them into it. And use tools like curiosity to bring it to life. And then step back and allow the actor to do what the actor was hired to do, right? And bring their brilliance to the film. And then you're going to get an Oscar winning performance if you've got a really good actor, right? And so that's the difference. I see a lot of times, boss really is about, okay, what we end up doing is we end up creating people that can just do a lot of tasks.
Mhm.
Or we feel like you hear things like, "Man, I told them 1,000 times and they just can't get it right. I don't understand." Well, if what we're doing is talking to them and telling them and constantly kind of going after them, what we're creating is yes people, right? We're creating people that are just going to want to get you off their back. And they're going to say what they need to say and do what they need to do while you're there until you're gone, and then they're going to do what they want to do. And that's generally how a lot of cultures work, right? And it's no fault of anybody really. It's not being clear on how to direct our energy. So the
Yeah.
number one tool I always recommend to people, and I hope everybody listening to this really understands this, is the best tool that you have at your disposal to go from boss to leader is curiosity, right? It's curiosity. It's asking more questions and telling less. So if I walk into my kitchen and I see there's the line, right? And there's a bunch of plates stacked on the line. And I want the plates stacked over here, but they're over there. And I go up to Joe on the line. I go, "Hey Joe, hey, can you move those plates back over there?" Joe goes, "Oh yeah, boss, no problem." Boom. And then I go in the next day and the plates are back over there. And I do it again. And the cycle continues. And I can't understand why nobody will just put the plates where I want them. Right?
Yeah.
Well,
I know, been there.
right? So now the reason that I want the plates there though is because when the plates are over there, they're under the heat lamp, right? They're warm plates. And warm plates means warm food, right? And when we designed it that way, we had an intention behind it. So instead of going to Joe and say, "Hey, put the plates over there," I could go to Joe and say, "Hey Joe, what is it that we're committing to our guests? Hot food, right? Yeah, 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 that's right. Hot food, hot plates. Okay, great. So, what about this situation is not allowing that to happen? Oh, plates are over here. They should be under the exactly. Thank you. So, Joe, how are you going to, train your team, to make sure that never happens again, so we can stay committed to what we've committed to our guests, right?
Yeah.
Are you with me? Can you help me with that? These are all questions I've asked. I haven't told them anything. Right? And so unlocking that key of curiosity is a huge tool for your tool belt. And I would ask anybody here that's having a problem with telling people to do things and they're not listening to try that and see how that works. Try it for a week and see how that works. I guarantee you're going to see something much different from your teams.
Yeah, I agree. I have 2 funny stories I have to tell you. Before we get there though, I say all the time when I'm training people, you have to train and you have to teach what's in it for them. Everybody beats to the same radio station, WIIFM. What's in it for them, right? And in order for somebody to understand what you want and what you need for the business, you need to they need to understand it from their perspective. Sometimes it's communication. There's such a huge communication gap. You're talking at them and they're not listening versus
Mhm.
asking the right question or teaching them why it's so important. So agree 100%. And becoming a leader is such a hard thing. Sometimes it's a hard lesson for a lot of owners. They I worked for a big accounting firm at one point, and the owner um, didn't allow a lot of his leaders to make decisions. He everything had to flow up to him, and he had to approve everything. And by the time it got approved, it was already a quarter later, and they missed certain things. And whereas if they're true leaders in an executive role, there has to be an ability and an accountability to make a decision and the right decision without every single thing being looked at. I mean, obviously there needs to be an approval process, right? For important decisions. But there
Yep.
has to be an ability to trust the people that you put in key roles to make a decision. So, Super important. But I gotta tell you a really
Absolutely.
funny story because you talked boss and leaders really quickly. So we're opening this new concept, Vivi's Chicken and Mac, and it's named after my 6-year-old Vivi, soon to be 7. And she says to me, "Mommy, my name's on the building, so that means I get to be the boss." Every time I walk in there, I'm the boss, right? I'm Vivi. I'm the boss of my restaurant. And I looked at her and I said, "Vivi, why do you want to be the boss?" And she said, "Well, the boss gets to tell everybody what to do." And I said, "Well, Vivi, but the boss is not respected. The leader, which is who you want to be." And I said, "Let's talk about what a leader is, because a leader, people follow and they listen to and they want to work for. A boss, even though you're telling them what to do, they might not do it." So we had this whole, I mean, I'm teaching the difference between boss and leadership to a 6-year-old. So it's not just your employees.
I love that. It's and you know what though? What a great that's awesome. I love that. I love that.
Isn't that hysterical? We had
Oh
the
my
same
gosh.
conversation. She's like, "My name's on the building, so I'm the boss." That's
That's
my
so cool.
child. Wonder where she gets it from.
Oh, I love
Anyway,
that.
yeah. So back, I always digress. I talk into all these conversations, so I apologize. I'll focus for a minute.
No,
So
no, this is
in
good.
terms
This is good.
of warning signs, you're hired, you're a consultant, you get into this restaurant and you have one of these bosses.
Mm.
What's the warning signs that you see that holds owners back from building their business and being profitable and scalable?
Yeah, I mean, wow.
There's
I
lots
mean,
of them, right?
there's definitely yeah, there's lots of them. But I mean, look, if you find yourself, like I said before, like if you find yourself telling people over and over again and you can't figure out why they won't listen, that's a warning sign, right? If you find yourself, just burnt out, right? Like, I mean, so many people feel like, "Oh, I'm just gonna do it myself because it's easier," right? Or, "Oh, I'm just gonna, I've always worked hard and I'm just gonna work my way through it." I'm not a proponent of hard work. I'm a big proponent of hard work because we've gotta put in the hours, we've gotta put in the time and the reps and all that stuff.
Especially
Um,
if you're in the restaurant business. If you're afraid of hard work,
absolutely.
you're in the wrong industry.
Absolutely, no, I mean, we're some of the hardest working, grindy people there are,
Yes.
but it's also there's also so much more leverage that we have, right? And, we really do, like you had mentioned, we need to allow we're not doing the people that are working for us any service by not stepping back and allowing them to bring their skills and talents to the table. We oftentimes think we're helping by jumping back in, but we're actually not, we're actually, and it's scary as an owner to step back and think, "Oh my gosh, but if things go wrong or they spin out of control, then oh my gosh, place is gonna catch on fire," or something like that. But we have to allow for that space, we really do. And
Yeah.
so, there's a lot of signs along the way. But I think that general sense of, is this really, really harder than it needs to be? That's a big one. We need to look at that. Well, maybe if that's true, then maybe we need to look at the people. We need to look at the systems. We need to look at other things that are contributing to see, if we can get this thing a little more well oiled and ready for scale.
Yeah. Well, before we run out of time, we have to talk about your book and Greg as an author. So let's just quickly, I want to talk about why you wrote the book, who your target audience was, the message behind the book, and I don't want to run out of time. So let's kind of jump into that for a couple minutes and what was your inspiration there? I'm writing a book now, so I can't wait to hear this story.
Yay. Well, I can't wait to read your book. Yeah, so this is
If I have time and I work in the restaurant business, it'd probably be published by now.
I'll help you with that, don't worry.
Okay,
Uh,
perfect.
so this is actually my second book. First book I wrote was also for the hospitality industry. It's called Butts and Seats: How to Create Raving Fans Who Come Back Again and Again. Um, this book is called Loyal AF: How to
Mhm.
Build a Ride or
I
Die
love
Team.
it.
Yeah, it's how to build a ride or die team that grows sales, wows guests, and never leaves. And the impetus for the book was because I was having so many conversations with restaurant owners and people outside of the industry too, about this idea of good help is hard to find. People don't want to work anymore, that kind of thing. And it kind of became this mantra that people were just kind of really recycling and believing. And I didn't really think that we need to believe that, right? I know I
Yeah.
didn't I think that that's
You
not
hear that
really
all
true.
the time, all the
Yeah,
time.
absolutely. And so over the years, through my work, I kind of unwittingly developed what I believe is an amazing system for helping, restaurant owners and other business owners too, to systemize their culture and be very intentional about how to build a loyal AF team. That wants to stay and wants to help you grow your business and that can thrive. And I think that we can attract and should attract great talent. And it shouldn't be those things good help is hard to find. People don't want to work, all that stuff. That's only true if you believe it. If you believe it, it's true. It's true for you, and it will continue to be true for you. But it doesn't need to be. So there's a system that can help you with that.
Yeah. My husband says it all the time. Don't speak it into existence. If you think it and you speak it, it happens. So
There
don't
you go.
think it, don't speak it, and change your thinking.
Absolutely.
Like I'll go to say something. He's like, don't say it. I'm like, okay, I'm not going to say it. You
I
know,
like him
he's
already.
it's really funny because we have a very funny dynamic, and, he's the true restaurateur where he's like, "Let's do it. Let's just do it." And I'm kind of the operational side where I'm like, let's kind of think about that." Like,
Yeah.
here's the questions, here's the devil's advocate. He's like, "I don't wanna hear that. We're gonna do it. Let's jump into it." So, I mean, it's funny you said that because I live that dynamic, more often than not. So, if you had one lesson from your book that you wanna share with the listeners today, what would that be?
I think that would be stop thinking how and start thinking who.
Mm, love
Yep.
that.
Yep.
Love that.
That's the big
All
shift.
right, well, I say this every show. We always run out of time. I'm telling you, I think I just bring the best guests on because we start talking and we have great topics, and then I'm always like, "You gotta come back. You gotta be my guest again because we didn't even touch half the things I wanted to talk to you about." But before you go, quick questions, lightning round.
Okay.
Growth or stability?
I'm going with stability and growth.
Okay. I would have thought you said growth, but okay, stability. Systems or creativity? Because you started by saying you're a creative person, and I'm a creative person. So I'm interested to see what you say here.
All right. Gosh, I'm wrestling with this one. Okay. The responsible person in me wants to say systems.
Mm-hmm.
Because I you need systems, but you gotta apply creativity. That's a toss up, man. Can I say
Yeah,
equal?
that's why I was curious what you're going to say because I am all about the system, but I live for my
No.
creative side. I mean, obviously, I do a podcast and I design, and I mean, if I didn't have my creative outlet, I think my inside would like shrivel and die. You know what I mean?
I
So
do.
you look at systems or creativity, I'm like, you got to have the creative piece, but you need the system to make sure it's you can replicate it and people can follow it, right? But
Yep.
that's why I wanted to see where you fell in here. All right, hire slow or scale fast?
Higher slope.
This is a good one, and I'm curious to see what you think because you've worked with a lot of restaurateurs and they all have the biggest egos ever. But what's the biggest ego trap in a restaurant? You know, a lot of these celebrity chefs and these big restaurateurs have huge egos, right?
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Yeah, I don't know, biggest ego trap. This is the way we've always done it, right? Or I know that already. Or yeah, we tried that, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Or
that's
this
tough.
isn't my first rodeo, or
Yeah.
you always hear that all the time. I know what I'm
Yep.
doing.
Yep.
And then
Absolutely.
the number one key performance indicator that every operator should know and take away from the show.
Ooh. Shoot. If I have to pick one, it's probably prime cost. That's your
Yeah.
biggest controllable, technically
Yeah.
speaking.
Yeah. Well, it's funny in the restaurant business, don't we always say there's only two things you really can control, and it's your payroll and it's your food cost.
Yep.
And in so many other industries, there's so many scalable, you can work on so many different things. But in the restaurant business, a lot of your operating costs are really locked. You know your rent, you know your utilities, you know pretty much what it's going to be to operate, but the only two things you really can control are your people, which is your payroll, and then, who does the ordering and it's your food costs. So,
Yep.
it's definitely a very unique industry to be in.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely is.
Yeah. Well, for everybody listening, you know where you can find me. DMs are always open on Instagram, Dine and Dish. You could always go to restaurantdiva.com where you can email, you can call. Love to hear from you, just like Bonnie did. Send me a text. It connects me with amazing people out there and great guests for the show and so many amazing topics that you can take away. And Greg, before we go, if you could give one piece of advice to restaurant owners listening today who want to grow, what would that be?
Oh, man, just
I know there's a lot, but
yeah, just you know what? Just have fun. Like this is so many things about this restaurant, the business that can just get you down and it can be really stressful. Um, I just, let's just have fun, man. Like let's enjoy what we do, just stay connected to that. And I think things tend to work out.
yeah. Yeah, I agree. You got to love what you do. That's one quote I always say when you wake up and you decide you don't like what you do anymore, it's time to change what you're doing
Yeah.
because life's too short. You got to like what you do every day.
Yeah, yeah, you really do. And be kind. Just be nice. Just be nice to people. I think that
Yeah.
goes a long way.
That's for sure. Well, for everybody listening, Greg, where can they find you? If anybody wants to send you an email or look for you or pick up your book, where can we find you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, well, always can DM me or hit me up on LinkedIn. Pretty active there, so that's an easy one. And yeah, I think that's probably the easiest thing. Just hit me there, and we can always have a conversation. And anybody listening that's interested in the book, I'm happy to send them a link that they can use and help in any way I possibly can.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, thank you so much for being my guest today. I knew it was going to be a great show. I mean, I started researching what you do and who you are, and I said, oh, this is going to be awesome. And we need to stay connected. And I would love to have you back
Oh, I
so we
would
can talk
love that.
more. And you need to get back to the East Coast so we can maybe do some work together.
That would be great. I will definitely find myself over there at some point, and I'll let you know. We'll definitely keep in touch. And thanks so much. I really appreciate
Yeah,
what you're
thank you.
doing.
And hey,
Love the
and for
energy.
Bonnie, and Bonnie's listening,
Yeah, thanks,
thank you so much
Bonnie.
for Bonnie. All right. Well, everyone, that is another episode of Dine and Dish. And Greg, thank you so much. It was a pleasure as always. And here's to another week, another episode, and we'll see you next week. Thank you so much.
Tired of your car insurance rate going up, even with a clean driving record? You're not alone. That's why there's Jerry, your proactive insurance assistant. Jerry compares rates side by side from over 50 top insurers and helps you switch with ease. Jerry even tracks market rates and alerts you when it's best to shop. No spam calls, no hidden fees. Drivers who save with Jerry could save over $1,300 a year. Switch with confidence. Download the Jerry app or visit jerry.ai/Libsyn today. That's JERRY.ai/LIBSYN.